Welcome to Not Just Ads, the show where B2B brands discover how creator-led content drives pipeline, builds trust, and grows long-term brand equity. Each episode, we speak with business leaders, founders, and creators who are defining their categories. I'm your host, Marcus Sherwin, and this is the creator economy for B2B. Hello and welcome today to Not Just Ads, the creator economy for B2B. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Sarah Adam. Sarah leads influencer marketing at Wix, and I'm really excited to delve into conversation all about creator B2B influencer marketing. She's a wealth of knowledge in the space. She's also part of the Global Council for Influence, a Global Influencer Council, a founding member. So I'm really excited to get into the conversation. Sarah, thanks very much for joining us today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Great. Maybe we could just go back to in terms of how you got into marketing in the first place. And was it something that you were like, you wanted to do this from an early age, or was it something that you just kind of discovered, or how did you get into it in the first place?
That's a good question. I haven't thought about this in a very long time. I think I do seem to remember as a kid, like at school, probably high school, and kind of thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to be? And I do remember thinking, not actually of marketing, but actually of advertising, only because I didn't know back in the day what the differences were and all that stuff. But I always thought of it as advertising. I remember I have a very early memory of like eating cereal in the morning and imagining different taglines for the cereal box that I was staring at, just because we didn't have mobile phones in those days.
They were the good days.
I'm sure I'd be just buried in TikTok. Otherwise. But yeah, I kind of always had like an interest for it. And then when I was deciding like what should I study in uni, so I was drawn to like communications because I actually thought that possibly PR was for me. And then when I started to play around with PR, I realized that, wait a minute, like there was something fundamental that I didn't like, because, you know, when you do PR, you invest so much, and then there's so much that's left to chance, because, you know, will the editor like that pitch? Will they put it in? And I didn't like that feeling of kind of losing control or not having control about that. So then I was like, okay, this isn't for me. And then I went into, like, back in the day, it was called Marcom, which I don't think they even have that anymore, but it's kind of like a PMM of today. And I went, I think the first time I did anything that has brought me today to what I'm doing, which is partnerships and influencer marketing, was actually field marketing. That was like first area that I kind of went into, where I was working with different organizations, different companies, different vendors, different people. And then I really loved that aspect of collaborating with others. And that's what led me to partnerships, which led me to influencers.
Right. Very interesting. Because it's especially in the B2B space, over the last 24 months, influencer marketing, creator marketing is something that's kind of exploded. You've been working in it for a number of years at Wix. How, maybe before we get into that though, you could just tell the audience in terms of Wix. I know most people will be familiar with the company, but for those that are not, maybe you could just give us an insight in terms of Wix and what it is you do and the markets you serve and so on.
Of course. So Wix has been around for a very long time, like almost 20 years. And Wix has forever provided a web creation platform, or started off by providing, and this is still our bread and butter, which is what we call DIY users, which is do it yourself. So people that have a hobby, or they run a charity, or they own a business, and it's small enough and they want to build their website on their own. So they don't want to pay an agency or something like that. So this is like the classic Wix. And this is still, you know, we have over 300 million users worldwide using Wix. So this is our bread and butter. And when I started working with influencers, it was actually when Wix started to appeal to other types of audiences. So to more professional users that create websites for others. So those small businesses, the ones that are paying agencies or freelancers to create websites for them because they need something more robust, more professional, more complex, more custom, whatever it is. And that's when we started to actually work with influencers, because we knew that we were aware of a perception gap that existed among those ICPs that are more sophisticated and think of Wix as like something too simple, or something that, why would someone pay me to build a website on Wix? Like, it doesn't make sense. They could do it for free, or they could do it easily, or they could do it on their own. This is when we first started to play around with influencer marketing, and we didn't even give it that name. Like, we just knew these were like thought leaders, or these were people that are leading communities, or they have newsletters, or they have podcasts, or, people look up to them, people trust them. How can we partner with them? How can we be in a situation where they are recommending us? Like, how does that work? So that was when we first started. And it was very interesting, because at the beginning it was really not easy, like, because we were tapping into these new niches. It was kind of like building it one brick at a time, almost. Like, each influencer call, we'd get on, we'd do a demo, we'd like build the relationship. It was like almost baby steps to kind of build the foundation. And then when we kind of got the hang of things and understood how it worked, we were like, oh wow, like, now we want to scale. And then it very quickly became a really important channel for us. And it is until today. And I can only see it getting bigger and better, to
Yeah.
be honest.
Initially, from the early days of when you started working with creators, then what was normally the play? Was it like kind of that you would do a one-off, or was it something like kind of more long-term, or what did you find was most effective
So,
in the
yeah.
early days?
So we started off with the one-offs, because we just didn't really know how it works and what it is. And we would actually and I give this as a tip to people starting off. Like, my first question to the creators was, how do you typically work with brands? What works? What doesn't? What should we do? Like, this is my
Yeah,
goal.
yeah,
In many cases, this is my budget. Like, what do you suggest? And then kind of have them decide, or give me their best advice of how best to do it based on what they know. And they know their audience is better than us. So I think at first we were thinking of it as like one-offs, let's see how it goes, and then we'll decide what works and what doesn't. Whereas today, we know what works and what doesn't, at least generally speaking. Obviously, each user is slightly different, but we typically start off with an agreement that maybe has 3 or 4 deliverables, depending, of course, on the platform. Even if we don't know exactly what the brief is going to be for the 3rd or 4th video, but we do try to start off with a big enough deal that justifies the investment for both. And then it really doesn't take long. I'd say after 2 deliverables, you already get the sense if this is this is strong, this isn't, we should work with this person or not. And then we look at long term. Like, for us, long term is like 3 months deals, 6 months deals.
yeah, yeah. No, it's really interesting. Like, when people are looking to work with creators, in your opinion, what was some of the early learnings in terms of like things to watch out for, or things that it was like, as you began to build it out, that it got more robust? Any learnings from the early days in terms of like the scaling and what to watch out for?
Yeah, I think and this is possibly like mistakes that I see other brands doing, brands that don't get it yet. Like, they don't really understand. So the beauty of working with influencers is leveraging their authenticity, right? And their language and their style. And when what does happen sometimes, and I see this, is when brands want to work with the creator, but then they kind of suffocate them with a very detailed brief,
Yeah,
like detailed. And they'll even give a script, and they'll insist, you must use these words. But then when you do that, you're messing around with their authenticity, and then you're not enjoying like what this is really about. So I think one of the things that we learned and have stuck, and is like the foundation, it's so important, is giving creative freedom and really understanding that it's not just something you need to do. It is the thing. Like, it's the most important thing. That's definitely an important lesson learned.
yeah, yeah. No, I can imagine. the audience probably see that as well. If it's something that's scripted and it's kind of the brand are pushing the narrative, the audience of the creator or the influencer are going to
Yeah,
notice that as well.
you shut off like
Yeah,
very quickly.
yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think then for when you're working with creators then in terms of like when you report back to the business on like how effective it is and stuff like that? Initially, what would you look at? Would it be like kind of reach metrics, or would you also get like, say, some things that wouldn't show up in attribution, but you're getting signals in the business that it is actually having an impact?
So that's a very good question. And this really depends each brand and their strategies and what's important to them. And it can change from campaign to campaign. You can have a campaign where the goal is awareness, and then you're measuring the performance of that content, and you're looking at maybe traffic spikes to your website, whatever it is that you're talking about. And then other campaigns that are conversion specific, and then you need to be able to link, and then that means that possibly YouTube is the better platform. So it really, the decision of the goal is so important to do at the very beginning before you look for creators, because it really does, it's like a domino effect, and it affects so many other decisions, and if you want to do it right, so you need to really define it at the beginning. For us, and influencer marketing has always been a brand awareness play. So look, we do care about the performance of the content. We care about the impressions. We care about engagements. We care about consistency, about having a consistent flow of content on the right platforms, content that's giving value, that's relevant to our ICP. We also look at influencer marketing almost like building the stage for our ads, for our acquisition efforts, right? I mean, if you just imagine someone doom scrolling their Instagram feed, and they'll see an influencer video about us, and then they're looking at other content, and then they'll see another one, and then they'll see our ad. So it's really building,
Sure.
it's setting the tone. So we see it, although for us, like I said, it's part of brand effort. It goes hand in hand with acquisition.
Yeah.
For sure, like it has that effect.
Yeah, it's interesting because I see with some brands now that as some platforms mature, they don't have like the organic reach of what they used to. So some people are taking the approach of whereby they'll work with a creator, but then they'll actually amplify it to a broader audience into their ICP and stuff.
Of
I'm just
course.
curious if you've tested that and if you've seen kind of
Yeah,
good results or
definitely. I think, and I think this is really true, not just for big brands like us, but also for smaller brands and startups, even founders that want to have a bit of budget and they want to play around with it. Because if you look, I mean, you can look at influencer marketing as an organic only activity, right? Where you're paying the creator a flat fee for the video goes live on their channel, and that's the end of it. However, you can also look at it as a paid activity where after it's live, and maybe you give it a few days to kind of perform organically and see that it's good, to then invest. It doesn't have to be too much more, like it could be a few $1,000s more in the promotion of that video. And then what happens is it's being promoted by the brand, so you can control targeting, and you add a CTA, and you have all that data and you're controlling it. It still appears on the channel, on the influencer's channel.
yeah. Yeah.
So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. And we've done that, and it works. What's great about it is that, if you know in advance that you're going to be doing that, and that's your strategy, then it means you can work with nano creators that do really good content, but they haven't exploded yet. They're not influencers yet. They may even have as little as 2,000 followers, and maybe their videos get hundreds of views or in the very low thousands. And that could work really well, because it means that, for example, you'll pay, say, $500 for the video, and then another, say, $2,000 for the promotion, and you're reaching really well-targeted audiences.
Yeah.
Some really good results. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, that's it. It kind of gets me thinking as well, because that always comes up, I think, is the challenge of and I'd love to get your opinion on this, is if you're doing an influencer campaign, going with like the really well-known person in the category or the really well-known influencer that has, you know, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of followers versus the niche ones that have like maybe a much smaller audience, but they're very engaged. It's very targeted. What have you seen has worked well in terms of like having, say, a number of different nano or like very niche creators versus like going all out on some big partnership with like someone that's really well known? In your opinion, do you think there's like a kind of a space for both, or do you think that actually going nano and being really targeted at the audience can actually be more effective?
So I, like, from my experience, and this is true to our niche, right? It could be very different for other brands, but just talking from my experience, we prefer working with, so again, the organic and paid strategy. If we're going organic only, then we prefer to work with a healthy number of kind of mid, yeah, which to me in our niches is like anyone between, I mean, we don't look at following, we look at views. That are getting between like a minimum of 10K views a video to say 300K views video.
And this is on YouTube then. Would it be normally that you look at influencers in that case?
Yeah, no, that's true for YouTube, for Instagram, for TikTok, for LinkedIn, the impressions are lower, but it's true across platforms. That's like if we're going organic only, that's what we prefer, working with large number rather than just a few very big ones. If we're going the paid strategy, then definitely adding more nanos to that mix.
Yeah, that makes sense. In your opinion, then, when people are working with creators, what's the from you've been doing it for a number of years now, but like, do you just reach out to them via LinkedIn? Do you work with an agency? What's the most effective way that you've found to kind of have some consistency and have a steady
Yeah.
pool of creators that you can kind of lean on when you have different objectives throughout the year?
Yeah. So this is, I mean, possibly a luxury of a bigger brand and a bigger team, but we do insist on doing everything in-house. So we do not work with agencies. It's very, very important to us, and this is why we don't do that, is we really want to own the relationship with the influencer. So we want to have that direct line of communication, not have someone in between, you know, being like the messenger or whatever. Now, I said it's a luxury, like, because we have the manpower. I obviously, if that wasn't possible, and if there are teams out there that want to scale, have the budget, but don't have the manpower, then obviously working with an agency is the solution. Agencies still need to be managed. It's not, it's not like you just hire someone, tell them,
Sure.
say, here's the money, see you later. So they still need managing. So you need that capacity. Do say, like, if you're going to work with an agency, ideally, if you can find one that has experience in your niche, proven experience, that means they already know the creators in the niche. They already have the relationships. It means it will be much quicker turnaround than an agency that's brand new to the niche and you have to teach them. And one more very important tip that I say, even if you plan to work with an agency, if you've never done influencer marketing before, I really advise to do the first campaign in-house. Like, just learn the prices, do the research, like understand how it works, because otherwise you're just going to be at the mercy of of the agency and you're just going to have no benchmarks, nothing to compare to.
Makes a lot of sense. Have you looked at any platforms in terms of for looking at creators? One that comes to mind, and we actually had him on the show, our first show actually, maybe you're familiar with it, Limelight. It's purely for B2B creators. They just connect kind of the brands with the creators.
Yeah.
I just wondered if you've looked at platforms like Limelight or similar to Limelight, if they've been effective of kind of giving you maybe some creators that maybe weren't on your radar previously.
Yeah. So we do not use kind of, I call them A to Z platforms that claim to take you from like the discovery up until the reporting. So we don't use that. There are many reasons why. Like, one of the things is that many of these platforms require the influencers to opt in to the platforms, which makes sense because when they opt in, that's when you get their data. and you need that. It makes total sense. We came across a few influencers that didn't want to opt in, and then we didn't want to have different workflows.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
perhaps this is niche dependent, scale dependent. But we personally don't use like an end to end.
Sure. Yeah. No, it makes sense. I mean, if you've been doing it for a few years and you have your workflow there and you have a steady stream of creators, I mean, it probably makes sense to have it in house, I guess. What do you think the future is then for creators and in B2B? Like, and the reason I ask that is because a lot of people now in LinkedIn, I was in LinkedIn for a number of years, and initially, about probably 18 months ago, they had a big push on video. But the big challenge was they actually didn't have a huge amount of video content. So they were always A/B testing what different functions with video. And then after that, they had a big push around creators, and they really kind of facilitated them to share more content on the platform. But probably in the last, say, maybe 6 to 7 months, maybe a little bit more, the organic reach on the platform is kind of reduced quite a lot because of this whole thought leader ads, and it's probably more effective. They are more effective, but it's basically, that's a consequence of having a lower organic reach for posts. So for a creator standpoint, I just wonder in your case of like, do you see the same with some creators that they kind of say, look, we're actually looking at reach as only as a metric now? It's kind of like, it's not really accurate because you may reach less people, but you actually could be more impactful in terms of the audience that you're reaching. Or I suppose my question is, with some platforms maturing, do you think the metrics are also kind of maturing or changing as well in terms of how they measure effectiveness?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for example, when it comes to LinkedIn, we don't, obviously, when we're researching and when we're looking for creators that we want to work with, like we totally skip impressions. I mean, it's not visible for us anyway, but also we see how the algorithm is just like on a roller coaster all the time. And it's so unpredictable. So we're just looking at engagements, and we're looking at the quality of the comments, and are they, are we seeing, you see this a lot, unfortunately, and we try to avoid it, but where you have influencers that there's like a group of them and they just comment on each other. And then
like a pod, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. And every post is just the same people. So we try, in our discovery process, we try as much as possible to skip situate those kind of creators, but it is very, very difficult, LinkedIn specifically. I mean, when I look, we're active on all platforms, and when I look at like our activity on Instagram or YouTube, it's it's so much easier to select creators to work with because, it's predictable. Like, okay, it's worked until now, it's going to keep working. And with LinkedIn, it feels like like a roller coaster. It's just like, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think, at least what I've seen with the changes in LinkedIn on the platform, the one thing that's the big change that they made was this relevance and recent. And you've probably seen that you can see these posts from like 2 to 3 weeks ago, and they've automatically updated the settings so that you would see the relevant ones. And what that means then is like the lifetime of your posts are longer, which I can see that it makes sense. But I think if you look at it overall, at least from what I've seen, the reach is a lot less.
Yeah.
But if I switch from recent to relevant, my feed quality is a little bit better. I think there's still a lot of like, they're not really there yet. And the algorithm is not as sophisticated as, say, YouTube's or Meta's or Instagram. It's not, it's an ads platform that's part of a marketplace. It's not a purely ads platform like, say, YouTube or Meta. And I think you can kind of see that reflected in some of the capabilities.
Yeah, I have seen recently a lot of posts by frustrated creators on LinkedIn about that. I mean, people feel it. It's
I think so. But I think if you look at like a lot of platforms, they kind of mature and some kind of give the creators like kind of the incentive and so on. And I think LinkedIn now in the last couple of months, creators are kind of saying that they don't have the reach there. So you can kind of see how they're kind of generating comments and trying to get that, the engagement in the comments and commentating and all this kind of stuff. But it's the thing about it is like trying to figure out and game the algorithm. It's no one, even when we were in LinkedIn, There's a few engineers probably in San Francisco that knows how it works, but everybody else is just basing it on some guesswork to some extent.
Yeah, crazy.
But I'd love to talk with you a little bit about the collective in terms of the Global Influencer Council
Absolutely.
and how that came about. Maybe you could just share with us what it is, how it came about, and
Yeah, so it's actually, there's an agency called Digital Voices, and they essentially put this together. So they reached out to people like me in other brands, both B2B and B2C, from across the US and across Europe, and formed this really cool, tight community of influencer marketing leaders. And we basically, like, we have a WhatsApp group, we have a Slack channel, we get together. Well, there's once a Q, there's like an official kind of board meeting. And then there's also these like webinars that we kind of share knowledge and teach each other from our experiences and learnings, which happen in between. So it's like twice a Q kind of thing, like in between those meetings. It's really great to just, meet other people that are doing exactly the same thing as you are.
yeah.
Different niches and different companies, and it's just a great way to learn from each other and get tips from each other, and I'm looking to hire this and I'm looking for that, and which is terrific.
Yeah, no, I think communities that are like you have valuable contributions are really, really useful.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard of Exit 5. It's like a B2B community as
Yes,
well.
of
That's
course.
really good. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's there's quite a few. Pavilion as well is another one as well. That's maybe you could share a little bit with us as well about like the tech scene in Tel Aviv. There's been a number of different like huge unicorn companies that have come out of there in the last few years.
Yeah.
How is it there? What do you think drives the innovation and like all the success of all these successful companies coming from Tel Aviv?
Yeah, it is so interesting. Okay, so my theory, it's part of our culture, like the culture here and the type of people that, I don't know if you've ever been here.
No, I haven't actually.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it's really part of our culture to just like to try to take risks. Like we're very like positive at heart. Like there's this
yeah,
saying that everyone says, and the translation is "it will be okay."
yeah,
Right? So there's this like overall consensus or just feeling that like just do it. Life's short. Like let's just do it. So it's just a mentality that people here have because of the way we live or
yeah,
whatever. We won't get into that.
yeah,
But it's just something that I feel people have here that's just different. And yeah, it's to do with risk taking. That's what I think it is. And together with like this crazy sense of positivity and everything's going to be okay. And also there's like another thing I think is Israelis are so good at networking.
yeah,
And somehow everyone knows everyone. There's a lot of like knowledge sharing and helping and like communities. And I think this also really helps like opportunities to like just surface and people
yeah.
grab it. It's like there's really good energies.
Yeah,
Like
no, it sounds great.
it's not by chance. It's like,
During my days, it's probably about 5 years ago now. I was working in LinkedIn and with WalkMe. I think you probably
yeah,
know them. I think they were acquired
yeah,
recently by
cool.
SAP. But we were due to go to on a trip to Tel Aviv, but it got cancelled because of COVID. That was the closest time that I got. My colleague at the time used to go like every 2 or 3 months, and he was always saying about how the food is great and
Yeah,
it's a really
food is
cool
great.
city and everything. So yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get to make it, but yeah, maybe some other time. But I've always
Yeah.
heard great things about the city and the ecosystem there. What are your predictions in terms of the creator space over the next, say, 6 to 18 to 24 months? Where do you see it going? What do you think the opportunities are? And what do you think B2B brands in particular are missing out on that they should be aware
So
of?
I feel that we're in an age now, like because of AI, that no one can predict anything. It's so difficult to predict. But I feel like on one hand, I mean, I'm very excited about whatever's going to come because it just feels kind of crazy.
Yeah,
I think on one hand, we have all this like, and especially on LinkedIn, we spoke about LinkedIn, like AI slop. that people talk about, too much use of AI. And I think that will probably still continue for some time, which means that like authenticity, which is so, which is why brands want to work with creators, will only get stronger and stronger. However, on the other hand, it's very tempting because there are so many.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a huge opportunity there. What's happening at Wix in the next months that's exciting or new, even creator partnerships or anything that you can share with us that's happening in 2026? Yeah, change is the only constant, isn't that what they say? Yeah. Sarah, it was great talking with you. Thanks for joining us on the show. If anyone wants to see your content, wants to find out more about Wix, where are you most active? Okay, perfect. Great. Well, we leave your details as well on the show notes. Sarah, thanks again for joining us. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Cheers, thanks.